Alrighty, today's the day. I know I should have probably took more video of it, but we'll get you guys up to speed on the Cummins project here. So here we go. So what we got here is a 1972 F350 camper special. It had a 390 and a 4-speed in it. The 390, it ran all right for sitting as long as it sat. Started knocking, pretty sure it had a lifter that collapsed, but it is now a B series Cummins in there. So let me kind of walk you through what we've got going on and get you up to speed here. So I custom built motor mounts. I've got a buddy that I borrowed, he's got a mock-up block. So I built mounts. The isolator here is the isolator off a first generation Dodge with a Cummins, and we got it all in there exactly where we need it. Same thing over here. It has to sit offset in here, so it's hard to see, but this one I just spaced it up with a piece of rectangular tubing. You can see it there. Sits up. Got good oil pan clearance. Lighting makes it hard to see. But this is a 97 12 valve P-pump motors, 215 pump. It stuck a piston on number 5. Pulled it out of one of my work trucks. Found a wrecked motor, or a wrecked truck with a good motor. Put that one in it, and I've rebuilt this one. It's an H1C turbo, nothing fancy. And this will just, it's just the first gen intake there. We're not going to run it intercooled for now. Next winter I'll worry about that. So we've got that. The transmission that I have decided to use, and I've been getting some grief for it because I don't know why people just seem to love their NV4500s, but this is the GetRag 360. It's all mounted in there. Got a custom built cross member here. I had to extend it back. There was a saddle fuel tank in here, but we've got some holes in here for a using the second generation Dodge with an NV4500 transmission mount, but got that all in there. The clutch, that was a fun one. So got all this linkage down here. That linkage goes up in there. We'll show you that in a minute, but it comes back. I've got a reaction arm here and welded this little tab to the back of the throwout fork. Built some linkage with some heim joints just to change directions. And then let me show you. Like I said, this was a factory manual transmission truck. It's hard to... So this was a factory transmission, so this was a factory manual transmission truck, and that there is the tube. I shortened that tube where the rod comes out of the floor to pull in this reaction arm, and I built this bracket off the starter to support this here. So the clutch is all mechanical, no hydro at all. Actually works pretty good. It's pretty light and works good. We'll see. It should disengage enough, but I've got that disengaging enough to where I can turn the driveline with it in gear. So that should work good. Power steering using a first generation Dodge power steering pump, because I've got the vacuum brakes, not hydro boost. So what we've got here, we've got the Dodge first gen line, we've got the Ford pressure line. I spliced in that JIC coupler there. I've got it running and I've deadheaded it both ways. That's all holding good. And then this is just the Ford return line here. I mean, it looks factory, looks sweet. And then this, we'll just put our vacuum assist for the brakes there, and that's done, ready to go. The throttle linkage, I've got it all right here. The rod comes out of the firewall. I had to bend it towards the driver's side a little bit. And then this is just a universal something or other I got off Amazon. Runs down here, pulls there, and we'll see if that does the job. The injector pump when the engine's not running, there's no assist from the oil pressure to help move the throttle, so that cable's probably not stiff enough for what I need, but with it running, the engine, it does all right. So that's that. The factory Dodge coolant temperature sensor was there. I cut it down a little bit to clear my throttle linkage, and then this spring-loaded coppery wire goes back. There's a port back here underneath the head, hard to see, but there's a coolant port way back under there in front of that other one. For now, I'm just gonna run this gauge here, just a mechanical Bosch gauge picked up at the local parts store. The shifter, I have the interior all back together now. I've relocated. You can see the old shifter hole was there. I've cut up and surgeried this tunnel cover, and the stick on here is the shifter for like I think it's an NV 5600, but I'm not positive, but it threaded on there. The stub shaft coming out of the transmission shift cover, I heated up and had to bend a little bit towards the driver. It was a new one. The transmission didn't come with one. It was a used trans. Supposedly has issues, but I bent that over towards the driver, and that should work. All right, so this injector pump, I put 4,000 RPM springs in it. I got 60-pound valve springs on the cylinder head. This pump come out of the wrecked truck, has 88,000 miles on it, so it should run good. Running the factory Dodge fuel filter. I've got to hook up my fuel lines. I'm just running it out of a bucket right now just to make sure everything runs and seems to work good. But for now, I'm gonna run, I have to run a return line. I've got the filler neck all pulled apart. I need to weld a fitting into that so I can run a return. The suction comes down through the floor here. Over here, I will put I'll put a bulkhead fitting in the floor so I can put some barb fittings in to run my return up here, and then we'll run it into the filler neck right here. So for now, I'm gonna use the tank behind the seat. I don't necessarily want to, but I've got this gap right here that I'm gonna build a tank to go right here. And if I did all my measurements right, if I fill up that gap as high as the bed is, 12 inches wide, it's 96 gallons. So that will be sweet for the road trips. But for now, we're gonna use this just to get me going so I don't have to stop, because right now I'm working on this on the weekends, so I don't have to stop for 3 or 4 weeks to get this tank all built and fabbed up, because I'm really close to getting this thing running. And I don't have to stop and wait for that. So, core support and everything's back there. I've already checked it all out. We're gonna run the mechanical Dodge fan. Upper radiator hose, I took the stock hose off of a 2nd gen with the Cummins, trimmed it down. The radiator that I'm using is the factory size radiator. It has an extra core, but the inlet and the outlet are swapped side to side. The Ford one, the inlet would have been over here, the outlet would have been over here, or the upper hose would have been over here, so it's swapped. It's a radiator that's designed to put a Chevy motor into the Ford chassis. So it actually lines up pretty good. But with that mock-up motor, I was able to put everything together and check my fan clearance, check everything out, make sure it fit in there perfect. It does. I've put it all in there. My upper radiator hose is cut to size. I'm waiting for some 90-degree fittings to come off the radiator here and the engine block, or the motor here, for the coolant inlet, so we can fab up a lower hose. AC compressor delete pulley. This truck does have air conditioning, you probably noticed. It was a factory air conditioning truck, and this air box, it's sweet. So the cab, everything in the cab should be there as far as air conditioning is concerned, but this truck had the AC compressor and everything out here removed. They cut the hoses, so I've got those at least. Hopefully we can have, it'll be a chore to pull that dash out and get that all going, but that'll be a next winter project. But the AC compressor I will build here. They make a high, I've seen people mount them up here. So I will build a bracket up here. We'll have to change this out to the vertical outlet, and we'll figure all this out. Anyway, later. project. I've tipped this off sideways for the oil fill to clear this hose, but we'll deal with AC later. But if you're going to run the compressor down here, you have to trim the cross member because it sits too far back in there on these Fords. So to get it to fit in there and sit low enough, the problem is this truck's two-wheel drive. So the problem you have on these two-wheel drive Fords is all your steering linkage is behind your cross member. So I had to trim this oil pan and adjust the suction tube just a hair. Anyway, got it all cleared. Before I had the weight of the motor in there, went and borrowed a buddy's tractor, chained the frame down to the forks and pulled this thing down to the bump stops, cycled the steering back and forth just to make sure this steering was gonna clear, and it does. Got lots of clearance in there. And I think I put 2.5 gallons of oil in it, and then started it and had to put another half a quart in it. So it didn't seem to lose a lot of volume on that oil pan. So we'll see if we get on steep hills or whatever, but I think it should be good. So that's that. Let's see what else. But we got this all running. Went through this motor, had to bore 20 thousandths over. But got that all done. Cylinder head's been gone through, got a valve job on there, but everything else is just used parts. Injectors should have, I think these injectors have 180,000 on them, but the pump's low miles. Got this thing all together. Had to get a damper, had to get a few things because the wrecked motor had been hit hard in the front, broke the damper, broke the AC compressor, broke the alternator mount and everything. So I've had to source a few parts, but that's where we're at now. My shutdown, I'm going to use the factory choke cable. I've removed all the electric solenoid and everything. We'll just build a cable or something to go on this little shutdown lever and just use the choke cable to shut it down. And that's where we're at. But more about the truck. Like I said, it's a Ranger XLT camper special. It's an F350. Factory power disc brakes on the front. I don't think it's factory. The left-hand side lug nuts on the rear axle only are left-hand thread. The left hand on the front side are right-hand thread. But I'm pretty sure this is a Dana 70 in the rear. So somebody, I think, has put this in aftermarket. But we've got a 10-foot bed. Don't know the manufacturer on it. But it's narrow to match the bed. It's not a big dually bed. So if you look down the side, that bed doesn't stick out. And really the only thing wrong with this cab, it's got a few dings and dents, but this cab kind of rusted through, and somebody's just terrible. I don't know if it got, because it's got fiberglass up in here. I don't think it rusted out. I think somebody just did a terrible job fixing that one. But now this gap is here because I don't know, but I'm pretty sure since this was a camper special, that Ford would have sent this to Winnebago or whoever, and they would have built a motorhome to go on the back of this chassis, right? It's like somebody bought it as a cab and a chassis and then took it and had this bed on it. And my guess is the bed manufacturer only made a 10-foot bed, not an 11-foot bed. So we've got this gap here. It had the saddle tank underneath here, which I think was 25 gallons, but that rod sticking up there was what they mounted the fill pipe to. So like I said, I'm gonna build a fuel tank there. I've got another gas powered compressor that's gonna go here. I'll mount some hose reels and maybe put a transfer pump in there so I can use this as a transfer tank as well. I'll put some hose reels up here so I can go do tire work. But got these compartments. It had a 2-barrel manifold on the 390. It came with a 4-barrel. There's a 2-barrel carburetor over, or manifold over on the other side with a couple of old junk carburetors. But all these boxes are in good shape. I don't know how many miles are on this truck. It says 36,000, but I don't know if it is rolled over or not. This one, the only thing I noticed about this bed is this handle. That's not the right handle, but everything else, the bed is pretty solid other than the floor. Up here, this had a piece of plywood in it for the longest time. Just all the sand that collected in the desert. I found this down in Nevada, but it was all covered in dirt. So anytime it rained, it just held the moisture. So the bed floor, only right up in the front, is rotted out, but it's straight. There's no dents. Anyway, yeah, so the whole goal with this truck build, I know I should have videoed more of it, you know, kind of show what's going on, but I've been super busy and I've been trying to just bang this thing out as fast as I can because I want to get it running so I can get it driving this summer, get it reliable, make sure the radiator is going to cool, make sure nothing leaks, make sure it's going to work good, because I want to take it down south to a car show, kind of down south end of the Utah here. There's a car show I want to go to, a couple friends go to it, and I don't necessarily want to put it in the car show, but I want to be able to drive it down there. So I've put good tires on it, and like I said, I drove it around with a 390. It did all right. Even with the 4-speed, I mean, it'd do 65 miles an hour. Got 8.5 miles a gallon, which isn't terrible, I think, for a 390. But I'm going to kind of show you guys the rest of this build as we go. I'm getting really close. Only got a few more things to do. I'm hoping to have this thing on the road in the next couple months. So stick around if this is something you want to see. Subscribe if you haven't already, I guess. Give it a thumbs up if you want to. We'll see you on the next one.